Venerables there with you, and all dear friends. Big warm welcome to all of you who have joined this session. And maybe some of you were here this morning. I recognize a few who were here for the meditation. And we were focusing on Anapanasati practice this morning for the meditation. And today we're going to look at, in more detail, at Anapanasati Sutta, an excerpt from the Sutta from Majjhima Nikaya 118. But before we begin, it's really nice to arrive, isn't it? To settle in and to do some meditation together, just to enter the space and relax and arrive. So please feel free, everyone, to begin. 10 minutes meditation practice, and then we'll launch into the Sutta study. We can very gently and gradually come into the shared space. Having had a chance to settle into the body, settle into the heart. Big welcome to everybody and respectful greetings to the Venerables also at Ayya Bodhi. Good to see you there. And yeah, this of course is a, collective effort, and everyone's welcome to contribute and reflect and question, and let's investigate together these wonderful teachings of the Buddha. So we're going to look at Majjhima Nikaya 118, an excerpt from Anapanasati Sutta. And, you know, this is one of the most important meditation teachings from the Buddha, giving us a lot of guidance, specifically how to practice with breath, observing the breath, feeling the breath. And it's a really important sutta, as you probably know, many of you. There's such a sense of importance that's given to this sutta. The very way that it's introduced is quite significant, quite unusual. The Buddha gives a month's notice before he actually offers this teaching. And he invites really people then to come, you know, from far and wide to listen. And he's surrounded by monastics, all the monastics that are known to us through the suttas, male. Usually the females are not so much mentioned, but I imagine there would have been as many, if not more, of them present. A huge gathering, and many training monastics present. So there's a real sense of setting the scene that we can receive when we read the beginning of this sutta, the introduction to the sutta. It's quite, gives you a sense of, you know, already the attention is really like, the level of attention that's required is, it's kind of apparent to us as we enter into this teaching. And so then the Buddha, when everyone is present, full moon night, large numbers of people, he explains this meditation technique of Anapanasati, breath awareness. And in this excerpt, he's really laying out the process and the results that we can expect when we practice this meditation technique. So, without any further ado, I'll pull up the excerpt and we can begin to have a look at it. Right. So the Buddha is telling us when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. Mahapala, Mahanisangsā. It brings great fruit and great benefit. Mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. This is the 4 satipatthanas, Chattaro Satipatthane, the 4 foundations or 4 resorts of mindfulness. How interesting that these 4 foundations can all be developed, cultivated simply through observing the breath. And he goes on, the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, the 4 satipatthanas, when developed and cultivated in this way, fulfill the 7 awakening factors, Satta Bojjhanga. So all of these path factors, these kind of qualities that develop through our meditation practice, come to fruition through Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. And he goes on, and the 7 awakening factors, the Bojjhangas, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. Vijja Vimutti. Knowledge and freedom. This is the end of the path. So the entire path is encapsulated in this practice of Anapanasati. So I'm going to stop here. This is a huge statement. I think we can go into it in a little bit more detail. And to begin with, I'd like to invite Ayya Brahmavara, if you'd be kind enough to offer some reflections on this first part.
Well, thank you, Ayya. We've been noticing how in the outline that was given to us for the study of stream entry, that we're following the 4 factors of stream entry, including associating with the wise person, associating with the true person, listening to the true Dhamma, having the Sati Sampajanya, the Yoniso Manasikara, making the wise attention that pays attention thoroughly, properly, and deeply looking into the roots, and then Dhammanu Dhamma Patipatya, practicing according to the Dhamma. And so here we can see that the monks have come from near and far to be in the presence of the Buddha, to be in presence of the ultimate human that was alive at that time, and how they then, give ear and pay attention and listen to these outlines, these ideas, and then within the breath meditation, we see how it's like what to look at, looking at those 4 domains, and how to look, framing it in terms of the arising, the Satipatthana refrain. And then in the outline that we have for this practice, the 7 factors of awakening is the very next thing that comes about. So this particular teaching about mindfulness is showing us how the mindfulness leads into the factors of awakening. I've been telling our students here to overcome any negative states of mind or any hindrances, in part by cultivating the positive states. One is the Brahmaviharas, or the loving kindness, but the other one is to notice to what extent, if any of those awakening factors are present. If we could say, oh, I'm interested in investigating the Dhamma right now, then one could say, wow, okay, this is a factor of awakening. The Buddha said this will lead to the goal. Let me be so glad that I'm getting something that's part of this practice. Or if I'm feeling energy, or if I'm feeling some samadhi, any one of those factors, if I can recognize and say, wow, this is one that I really want to develop, and notice it with a happy heart that way. So that's my idea about how it fits together.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Ayya. I think we should maybe go through these 7 factors of awakening, because it may just be that you know 1 or 2, or you know them all, but we can't necessarily bring them all to mind. And I may not be able to either. But let's see. Let's just consider them, because the Buddha's saying, we observe the breath, And we're observing the four foundations, the four satipatthanas. So this is, of course, the body. We're observing feelings. We're observing the mind. And we're observing Dhamma. We're observing the teachings. We're observing the truth. We're observing reality. So that in and of itself is something to really consider. All of this comes into our mindfulness of breathing. And when we practice Anapanasati, we get to know that, don't we? Because we get to notice so many aspects of our experience are manifesting for us. We get to see what's the state of mind. We get to see how the body feels. We get to realize Dhamma. So that is amazing. That first part, isn't it, Ayya? And then, as Ayya is pointing out to us, we get then this natural development and flowering of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Oh my goodness. So we get mindfulness, sati is one, investigation of Dharma, as I was saying, this interest, this quality of curiosity and engagement with the practice, with our experience. Right effort, there's effort involved, energy, the factor of awakening that is energy, rapture or bliss or well-being starts to arise for us sooner or later. And that leads into, what else have we got? Tranquility, passaddhi. It's relaxing, it's calming, it's soothing. As we continue to practice mindfulness of breathing, we develop samadhi, concentration, focus, stillness, and then the ultimate awakening factor starts to come in, does it not? Equanimity, this peacefulness, this, even-mindedness, the unruffleability, the unruffled quality, the unshakable quality starts to come in. And of course, this spills over into our lives. But all of this, then, the Buddha is immediately telling us, giving us the full potential of this practice of Anapanasati. How amazing, how wonderful. What an encouragement to practice in this way. So I'd like to invite anybody else who'd like to come in with any sharings, reflections, or questions at this point. Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm going to say here, and it's not meant to exclude anyone, because earlier stages along the way are extremely vital and important. But in this particular sutra, starting in some section by Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, section 8, and going to 14, which is just before he starts describing mindfulness of breathing, he says that this assembly consists purely of heartwood. And then he goes on to describe that there are arahants in this assembly. There are once returners in this assembly. There are no returners in this assembly. That was out of order. It's actually no returners, then one returned. And then there are stream enters, or as I prefer, hearing enters. And that's the description of who's in the assembly. So these are all noble disciples. And then he describes the different types of practices these noble disciples are doing at this time. And then he introduces the breathing meditation. So we see in many, many suttas when Buddha is describing how to go from what I believe is loving friendship level to confidence level, where you take the precepts, to a Dharma follower. The Dharma follower is the one who goes and starts inquiring into the Dharma, because he develops patience by going through the first beginning stages, okay? taking on precepts requires a certain amount of patience to exist. And so by doing that, right, and following those precepts, patience develops in his mind and or her mind or their mind, doesn't matter. And then they begin to inquire into the Dharma until they make a breakthrough while hearing the Dharma and become stream enterers or hearing enterers. And once that's done, then the actual practices of mindfulness and everything, which are further along in the path. And there's a certain sutra where Buddha describes those higher practices, but he says, but the other ones had already been well developed. So that's why you kind of go, depending on the individual, you kind of go quickly through the first 5 path stages. Like if you're already a bhikkhu, if you'd already taken or a bhikkhuni, you've taken the 10 precepts, right? You're already living by right livelihood and everything, generally speaking. And that profound insight at that point of becoming a stream enterer will kind of smooth that out a lot. And then you're ready for path step number 6, which is beginning to really divide your mind between the wholesome and the unwholesome and make a lot of progress in that. And then that facilitates focusing the mind and holding it steady in mindfulness or, clearly remembering, which then, you're ready to use this mindfulness of breathing. And that leads into the other stages, culminating in concentration, samadhi practice. And eventually, towards the end of the sutra, you attain nibbana. So now I'm not saying that people before that can't do meditation practices and things like that, but they probably won't have the full efficacy and full result because the mind is not clear completely about Buddhist teaching. So there's going to be doubt in things in there, even if one can enter into, because they can temporarily let go of doubt and they can enter into jhana, even go all the way to the formless experiences. But because in the back of their mind, they're not completely resolved, which is what happens with stream entry, hearing entry, on the Buddhist teaching as being, that's why you drop the first 3 fetters, okay? And one of them is you no longer have doubt. The Buddha is the fully enlightened teacher who's giving the correct way. So anyway, I don't want to be giving a lecture or anything, but I think it's very important to see. You can see it right here in the Sutta. He doesn't mention any of the lower types of followers. He only mentions the noble disciples. Anyways, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Richard. That's you're really following all Ayya Sobhana's classes. I'm just really appreciating that and your interest and your knowledge. Sadhu, sadhu, beautiful. Yeah, it's very interesting what you point out, that this assembly who were there to hear this teaching, it was like so many of the Buddha's disciples and so many attained beings, according to what we can read about the sutta. I don't know. I wonder if there might have been a few other people there as well, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The other thing that feels important to say is that I don't think this teaching is only for those who have attained stream entry or beyond stream entry. My sense is this is a universal teaching. This is for each and every one of us. And so just to sort of bring everybody in, it's like it's not one thing I love about the Buddha's teachings is that there's no kind of esoteric sort of hidden, only for the select few teachings. The Buddha's teachings are for each and every person. And this is a wonderful thing. It's like there's nothing that you have to wait to receive or that you have to earn through your spiritual endeavors. It's open. Everything's open. The Buddha described his teaching as for all of us. Like you could say that it's like there's such a number of entrance ways. There's such a number of different aspects of the teaching, so that it's like there's something for everyone. And I really appreciate what you shared, Richard. And also at the same time, recognize that this sutta is something even a beginner, somebody who hasn't meditated, who's just coming into the practice, can certainly benefit from studying and reading and taking in. I don't know what you think about that, or anybody else who'd like to come in with any comments, reflections, or questions.
Okay, Corina.
Oh, I see. Huh. Hi, yes. Nice to see you, Ayya Brahmavara.
You too.
Just a question. It's really amazing to think about something as seemingly simple as the breath and paying attention to it through the four foundations of mindfulness, fulfilling the seven awakening factors. It's like, guess what? Your shoelace is really important. This little thing that you use today. But makes me curious and makes me kind of inspired. Do you have any knowledge that this sort of like this framework of the Satipatthana is applied in this way to other things? Like can you apply it to walking or how you eat food, or and have it have the same effect as far as fulfilling the seven awakening factors? Or is there something special about the breath? That's the question.
Brilliant question. Thank you so much, Corinna, for that question. Ayya Sobhana, would you like to respond?
Well, that's a brilliant question, because actually in any moment where we're awake and having our experiences, at that moment, the body is there, the feeling is there, the mind is engaged, and the patterns of the Dhamma are manifesting themselves. So it seems to me that indeed one could take that same four-part model and apply it towards walking or eating or any other of the practices or contemplations. The breath has got some special qualities that make it especially effective as an object of meditation. One is that it's very universal, except in case one had a breathing disorder, it could become complicated to use that as an object of meditation. But for most people in the world, breathing is accessible, natural, and it's not that complicated. You're not that much involved with greed and hatred, just with your breathing. But like with your eating, all kinds of neurotic things could be associated with your habits around eating. So the breath has that beautiful simplicity as well. This morning Brahmavara was pointing out how natural it is to be able to access the experience of the breath, and how the rhythm of the movement of the breath is something that very naturally shows anicca in a way, and how the movement of the breath makes it easier to focus on something that's moving than trying to focus on something that's absolutely seeming to be still, like focusing on a Buddha statue, for example. It might be more difficult than focusing on the breath, because the movement of the breath helps the mind to stay awake. So those were some reasons why the breath is a good object. But I think you're right. Any object could be applied that four parts model.
Yeah, it makes me want to think about going through my day differently.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So friends, let's maybe return to the sutta at this point, and let's see where we go from here. So now the Buddha tells us how to do the practice. And how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial? It is when one, gone to a wilderness, or to the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down cross-legged, sets their body straight, and establishes mindfulness in front of them. Just mindful, they breathe in. Mindful, they breathe out. So I'm going to pause here just to make a short comment. It's very interesting to me that this is a place where we receive some instruction, some pointers from the Buddha about how to meditate. So this is really quite significant. To sit cross-legged is mentioned. That's interesting. To be upright, to sit straight is also mentioned. And the location, clearly the Buddha's pointing to some kind of a private or a quiet, perhaps a solitary space. So to seek out a suitable place for meditation. So I think that's, we don't have a lot of instructions from the Buddha really around how to position ourselves, how to meditate, or how to position the body, where to put ourselves. This is one of the places where we receive these instructions. And there's the other piece that Ayya Brahmavara has mentioned previously in classes about putting the attention in front. And I notice, Ayya Brahmavara, you'll often give that instruction for our meditation, to bring the attention in front, which I find very helpful, very lovely, because it's really directly from the words of the Buddha. And there's a lot of debate, isn't there, Ayya, about what does that mean? This instruction, samukha, in front of the face. Do you have anything to throw light on this for us, Ayya?
Well, there was one time during my own personal meditation when contemplating the body was very difficult, because the body seemed to very, like there was too much activity happening in the body, too much trembling, movement, pains, all different things happening in the body, and it was so unstable. And so then I had the idea of visualizing the breath actually after it had left the body, and the breath is like right in front of the mouth or in front of the nose, and literally putting my attention on the air outside the body in front of the nose, the air in front. And for a while, actually, that method actually made it possible for me to become much more calm and peaceful than before. The other way that seems also reasonable is, it's like if you're in a crowded room and there's so many people in the party, you could pay attention to all of them, or this one or that one or that one, but the one that you're choosing to pay attention to, you bring that person right in front of you. And then you're paying attention while you're speaking with that person. You've got that person right at the front of the line, in the front of your awareness. And so that's the meaning that I currently find the most useful. Other commentary, I think sometimes they think that the rim of the nostrils is what's meant by in front there, which also can be.
Thank you so much, Ayya. That's really helpful. Yeah, I'm going to try that method also that you described. Anybody else like to comment on these instructions about how to establish ourselves, how to prepare, how to sit? Okay, very good. So let's move on. Just mindful, they breathe in. mindful, they breathe out. Breathing in heavily or observing a long breath, they know, I'm breathing in heavily, the breath is long. Breathing out heavily, they know, I'm breathing out heavily, the out breath is long. When breathing in lightly, they know, I'm breathing in lightly, or the breath is short, the in-breath is short. Breathing out lightly, they know, I'm breathing out lightly, the out breath is short. So this is kind of interesting. The beginning of our Anapanasati practice, we can observe this simple aspect of the breath. Is it long? Is it short? Is it harsh? Is it subtle? Am I breathing heavily? Am I breathing lightly? And my sense is that for most of us, the progression would be from the long to the short, which is suggested in this sequence. First, we may have to breathe quite hard, heavily, because that's how it is when we're not relaxed. That's how it is when the mind is racing. That's how it is when we've been active, actively participating in the sense realm. And then we start meditating, we practice Anapanasati, and what happens? It points really, this teaching here, to the fact that we start to relax. The mind cools down. Literally, they've done experiments to show that people's heads get cooler when they meditate, which is marvelous. The mind cools down, the body cools down. And so the breath, we don't need as much oxygen. So the breath can become more subtle. And isn't it beautiful that this aids us, of course, in developing mindfulness? Because at the beginning, the breath may be very obvious, very noticeable, but as we relax and we calm down, the breath becomes more and more subtle, slight, short. Therefore, the mindfulness becomes greater in order to continue to be aware of that breath. So what an extraordinary opportunity it provides us, this breath, to deepen our awareness as we calm and settle into the practice. Ananaya, hi.
Okay, this is more semantics than it is profundity. You know, Ajahn Sujato uses several, in his translating in what I consider his attempt to modernize or update the language to be more accessible. But sometimes he uses words that just shift, for me anyway, shift the meaning. Heavy breathing is not the same as deep breathing. Usually, if you're breathing heavily, you've got a problem. Now, I am a nurse, so I'm sure my mind is more tuned into that, because that's the language you use to differentiate the quality of the breath, of a person's ability to breathe. All right. So breathing heavily, generally speaking, you're either in distress, or your lungs physically are in distress. Breathing deeply, what does the doc say? Deep breath. He or she doesn't say breathe heavily. I mean, so anyway, so that's just my point of differentiating with his translation. With the breath, I'm a person who has had that attaining samadhi with the breath has been more difficult. I'm not a person who naturally took to breathing and then getting into concentration. I've had, to use metta is much more natural for me and easier for me to focus on. So, and I'm not saying not to do breath, for heaven's sake. I mean, obviously, that is still a key thing. And it is the brilliance of the Buddha to pick something that everybody has without discrimination And unless you are ill, it's there all the time and accessible. So I just want to be clear on that point, that I'm not saying I think the breath is not a good idea in pursuing deeper meditation. So thank you.
Thanks, Ananaya, for those great comments. And it's true, I think Diga and Rasa actually do simply mean long and short in relation to the breath. And perhaps it's helpful to just note that. Yeah, thank you very much. Marilyn.
This might sound like a pretty novice question, but when you're using your breath, you're bringing yourself, the goal is to come into stillness and into silence. So at some point as you breathe, the breath becomes more refined and you lose a sense that you're breathing. You might even have a moment where you're thinking, I'm not breathing. Maybe the first time you experience, what happened. So when you're going to the silence and you've lost a sense of awareness, are you saying that you still need to have that awareness that you're breathing, or is your focus being taken quite away from it? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you. Ayya Sobhana, would you like to respond?
Thank you. I just I focus on the word in this sentence of pajanati, which means to know, to understand, to find out, or to distinguish. I always, and it's related to the word panya, which is the wisdom or intelligence or the knowing faculty. So I always felt that it's a special kind of like direct knowing. It's not like an intellectual inference or something complicated like that, but just directly understanding, like, what is this? And being able to distinguish the short breath or the long breath. Is well, it can be a window into the state of how settled we are in the meditation, or how activated the body is, or how calm the body is, could determine the quality of the breath. And to know whether it's long or short, we have to be more continuous. So it's sort of a natural way of becoming continuous, because if I only, like for 1 millisecond in each breath, I for a minute I notice that's an in, and then I go out in space, and then I come back and I notice, oh, that's an out, and then I go out of space, but I'm not like continuously aware, then I'm not sufficiently present to be able to tell the length of the breath. So others may have this particular instruction about long and short, aside from the continuous aspect, others may have better ways to get the juice out of this particular instruction.
Thank you, Ayya. I think it will be interesting to continue to see, Marilyn, what comes next. In a way, it may lead into an answer to your question as we follow these instructions. Let's see. So let's return to the sutta and see what comes next. So, awareness of the length of the breath, whether long or short, is the first instruction. And then they practice like this, or one would practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing the whole body. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing the whole body. The Pali here is Sabba Kaya Patisamvedi. Patisamvedi, experiencing Sabba, all Kaya, the body. There is a certain amount of debate about the meaning of this, which is probably you all know about, whether this refers to the body as in this physical form, or whether it refers to the body as in the body of the breath, the entirety of the breath. We can practice with either interpretation usefully. So that's something to consider. Going on. One practices like this. I'll breathe in, stilling the physical process. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, I'll breathe out, stilling the physical process. Kaya Sankara is the physical process, the physical condition, the physical formation. Pasambayang, to calm, to tranquilize, is another common translation from Bhikkhu Bodhi, to tranquilize the bodily formation. It's another way of putting it. So I'll come back here to the group. And so we've got, this follow on from, first of all, sitting in a good posture, good position, in a suitable place, starting to observe the breath. First thing we can observe is the length of the breath and how perhaps that changes as we sit, how the breath perhaps becomes more subtle as we're meditating. And then we can begin to perhaps open out the attention. This is one interpretation I'm giving. Open out the attention to feeling the whole body breathing. And isn't it true, we can literally feel the entire body as it is affected by the in-breath, as it is affected by the out-breath, what actually happens in the whole body. And indeed, we can cast our attention, widen and broaden our attention to take in the whole body. Alternatively, we can really get into the body of the breath, really investigating this process, this beautiful rhythm, the fullness of it, all the aspects, all the nuances of the breath. So this is just some commentary on this beautiful, profound, simple, yet profound teaching. Ayya Sobhana, would you like to make any comments at this point?
The first two lines of instruction had the verb about knowing. The first line, that know I'm breathing in, know I'm breathing out, that's a pajanati. And then breathing in long, short, it's also knowing. But then when it comes to this direction towards the whole body or the body formation, it becomes a sikkati, which means training. So this has got a bit more like a intentionality that we're undertaking doing a practice. And it may be good to take these two together, that you are just able to be aware of the body formation or the body manifestation in order to then be able to let the body formation calm down and go towards stillness. And then in the other groups later on, we're doing a similar process of quieting down and stilling the different aspects that we contemplate. And so this, sometimes those who've been in our class have known that sometimes all I'm trying to do is just get you to calm down. I know that your week has been so stressful, and you come on sometimes, just calm down, take this, calm down, just relax, just calm, because I feel like people are naturally too excited because there's too much excitement in life. So that's the main thing here about like the mind and body are connected. And when the mind is like stressful or uptight or wrapped uptight or agitated, then the body is going to be also wrapped uptight and stressful and agitated. And so then the mind and body get in a kind of like a rut of excitement or agitation. But then if you know how to relax the body, then when the body becomes relaxed, it might be possible for the mind to become relaxed. So I really appreciate this teaching of just learn how to relax the body.
Sadhu. Thank you, Ayya, so much. Let's move on, friends. Okay, next section. And just to say, you know, these first 4 instructions around the length of the breath, the body, whole body breathing, all the aspect of kaya, the first foundation of mindfulness, body. And now we're moving into the aspect of feelings, Vedana, second foundation of mindfulness. The Buddha goes on. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing rapture. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing rapture. The word here for rapture, piti. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing bliss. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing bliss. Sukha. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing mental processes. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing mental processes. Chitta Sankara. Mind or heart, chitta, Sankara, conditions, formations. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, stilling mental processes. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, stilling mental processes. Again, sikkati, as Ayya Sobhana very helpfully pointed out, we're now training. We're kind of directing our attention in such a way that we can appreciate these aspects of experience as we practice Anapanasati. And here, stilling again, stilling the mental processes, pasambayam chitta sankaram. And so just to pause here, this is a whole area, bringing in Vedana, bringing in feeling. And it's very interesting that, you know, how does the Buddha describe this experience of the feeling realm? When we practice Anapanasati, he describes it in terms of bliss, in terms of rapture and then bliss. My sense is piti is a very, how to say, energetic feeling of well-being. As we start to meditate, we calm down, we can start to feel the benefit. As Ayya Sobhana said, as the mind starts to calm down, she said, when the body calms down, it gives some chance for the mind to calm down. And this is exactly what this section is pointing to, that we're starting to relax, physically ease, the mind begins to experience some peace, and it's rapturous. It's wonderful to have some peace, some slowing down, some mental space at last. Piti, rapture can arise. And as I said, this has an excitable quality to it. It's energetic, an energetic sense of well-being. And then this can lead into sukha, happiness. It's a calmer quality. It's more contented. It's more relaxed still. And from this vantage point, we can then begin to become aware of the mental formations arising and passing. We can become aware of thinking, you could say, or we could become aware of the heart mind, and how that is. How are we? You know, we can start to observe and feel out this aspect of our experience. And then in that opening, there's the opportunity for the mental processes to begin to calm down, some stillness to begin to arise. So how beautiful. Any comments, Ayya Sobhana, on this section?
I just want to acknowledge that for some people, depending on what's going on in your life or how far along you are in your practice, you could be doing this practice and you're saying, okay, so piti, I'm just not getting it. I'm not getting the kind of samadhi that includes, because a piti is a very strong, clear, bright, obvious, lovable kind of a mental condition. And so at that point, I think it's really useful to just think, it's because of the causes and conditions in my life that I'm not at this point like going into such samadhi that's including piti, and just to be mindful, kind, compassionate, and loving, and just continue staying with observing what's going on with the feeling, the state of mind, and what's going on with the state of the body. Another something that I experienced myself when I was a beginner is when I tried to focus on the Vedana or the feeling, it was almost like getting a stage fright or something. I couldn't locate any feeling. I would like say feeling, I don't know. What's a feeling? I just didn't have the context. And I did some reflection about like what feeling is for. And so I had the idea that the pleasant feeling is what enables us to open up, relax, and be present. And then when I thought about that kind of motion of like open, relaxed, accepting, receptive, being happy to stay, no need to move, can just stay because one is like that's where the pleasant is. And then when a mind is like a jumpy, wants to jump off, like I don't know, there's a jumping bean or something that wants to jump off, that's when the opposite, like an unpleasant feeling. So it's like when that jumping quality has stopped and the mind is glad to stay present. That's the quality that I'm looking for at this stage.
Thank you so much, Ayya. Any other comments, reflections, or questions at this point? Corinna.
Thank you. Can take a while to find the raise hand button. I just appreciate that differentiating between knowing something and then training. And just my experience with teaching yoga classes for a long time, how I very much at the beginning of class just encourage students to like, okay, we're going to expand our breath, like literally open up your chest, lift your sternum, open up your arms. And then it's beautiful because by the end of class, you can feel that expansion of the breath without having to make such a coarse, big movement. And at the same time, if I'm in a quiet place, I can switch from knowing to that training aspect of like, I can start to sense the breath going through my whole body. Or a better way to say it is really like I can feel it affect my whole body, like down to my toes, breathing, or and it literally has like it's like an kind of an oil spill is the best analogy, but just like it just like extends out in a non-linear way. But it takes intention, or like I have to to know that's possible. Like at first, maybe it comes by accident, but then you can cultivate that. You can like, no, I'm gonna extend this feeling of the breath going further. I'm gonna feel it into more subtle areas, not just the more coarse areas. It's easy to feel the breath at the chest. So I really like that idea of, because I've heard in the translation it's usually like experiencing, but that's kind of passive. It's more like I like the word training. It's like you're cultivating it. You're looking at the more subtle. So for me, that question of, are you looking to experience the breath in the whole body, or looking to experience the whole body of the breath? They're the same thing for me. Yeah. Thank you.
That's wonderful reflection. Thank you, Karuna. Okay.
I have something to add. In the Pali, it's what's translated as experience is the word patisangvedi, and it seems to have something to do with a vedana or a feeling. So, a feeling, it also has something to do with a vidya or knowing. So feeling and knowing has a connection, and the Vedyati is a causative of vindati, so it's because you feel that enables you to know. That just seems kind of wonderful to me.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Okay. So let's continue to the next section, which, as most of you will know, Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana. The third foundation of mindfulness, the chitta, the heart mind. And this next section is relating to this foundation of mindfulness. So the Buddha goes on. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing the mind. Chitta patisangvedi. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing the mind, feeling the mind. Patisangvedi. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, gladdening the mind. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, gladdening the mind. Abhipamodayang. Pamoda, happiness or calm, peacefulness. Abhi is a kind of prefix that emphasizes that experience, gladdening. So experiencing the mind, gladdening the mind. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, immersing the mind in samadhi. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, immersing the mind in samadhi. Samadhahang chittang, stilling the mind. Again, this aspect comes in. Peace, stillness, a settling, calming. Ayya Sobana, any reflections for us?
Well, it's the same pattern towards the feeling and towards the mind, isn't it? First, just aiming awareness so that you're able to notice that. Then the uplift, the bringing up the piti or the uplifting feeling, or else gladdening the mind. That's lifting up. And then from that stage of uplift, then there's this very gentle calming down, falling down, and coming in towards calmness or stillness. So it seems to be saying that this practice of stillness without the joy or the happiness, just trying to go to stillness might not really work. But coming from that place of uplift or inspiration, positivity, and then from positivity going to stillness is the way that's going to be successful. Such an important lesson.
Thank you so much, Ayya. And again, to point out, just as Ayya Sobhana did in the last section, it doesn't mean we have to feel disappointed, right, if we're not experiencing this gladdening, you know. Actually, even if we're not experiencing a gladdening of the mind, we may notice that we could say there's some sense of settling in the heart, or calming, or just arriving even. I mean, it could be a sense of recognizing how agitated we are, or how upset we are, how traumatized we feel, how distressed we are. But even that comes in here, because it's just to know, just to feel, just to train, to direct our attention in these ways. Allows us to begin to, you know, work through, let go of, process, digest our experience. So, you know, again, as Ayya Sobhana said, we might not experience piti, we might not experience this word rapture or happiness. We may not experience gladdening of the mind, but we will certainly be getting to know the mind better and have a sense of where we are, what is happening, how is it here. So heart, chitta means, you know, as many of you will know, it means mind, it means heart. In Buddhist understanding, these are not separate things. The mind isn't somewhere up here in the brain, in the head, although we can often feel that it is, because we relate so much to our visual sense and hearing. We can feel it's all up here. But actually, isn't it true that when we meditate, we start to recognize, oh no, there's so much more. There's a real centering in the heart, in the center of the body, and every part of the body is engaging with the world, is alive to the world, is sensing, feeling in every moment. So this sense of chitta as mind really is referring to the whole body, the heart, the fullness of our awareness. Anybody else like to come in at this point? Any comments, questions?
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Ayya. Just figuring out how to access the chat.
Should I read it to you?
Oh, I can see it now, Ayya Sobhana. But would you like to read it to us all?
This is a
Thank
question
you.
from Samaneri Satima, who's here. I have heard that one need only fulfill one of the four tetrads in order to go the whole way. Could you comment?
Yeah, okay. Just trying to figure out how to get rid of the chat for now. Yes, that's really an interesting point and a great question, Samaneri Satima. Thank you for that. Yeah, isn't it amazing, this path of practice? And we touched on it earlier with a previous question that, you know, if we really develop one aspect of the practice, if we really contemplate one aspect of the teachings, then often it kind of brings in, it kind of relates to all the other aspects. It's a bit like dependent origination, isn't it? We touch into the Eightfold Path and we're going to meet at some point, you know, all the aspects of the Buddha's teachings. If we contemplate one of the path factors, we're going to start to realize after a while that actually all the other path factors come into play, because they all nourish and support each other. For example, if I'm really into meditation, I just want to develop samadhi, I very quickly get to realize that without a a base, a foundation of virtuous action, speech, and thought, I'm not going to be able to develop samadhi without a certain degree of wisdom, understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It's not going to work for me. So all the different path factors help and assist and support and nourish one another. And I think in the same way, Seminary Sattama, if we were to focus on one of these sentences, one of these practices, we would probably be able to experience, recognize, benefit from all the other ways in which we will experience the breath. But we can just focus on one very fruitfully, very beneficially, is my sense. Ayya Sobhana, do you have anything to add to answer Seminary's question?
Richard might have a better answer than me.
Richard.
Thank you. Actually, I was going to add something else, slightly different. If you notice here, the first thing you attempt to attain is, by Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, is tranquilizing the bodily formation. Then in the next section, because rapture and pleasure start to come up, and those can be distractions, right? So your mind might start thinking, oh, what bliss, oh, how wonderful this is, oh, nothing could be, and those thoughts are like taking you away. So then you have to tranquilize those thoughts, which is tranquilizing the sankharas, because sankharas are like the thought just popping up in the mind. And as the thought pops up in the mind, you have cognition of it. You cognize your own thoughts as they arise. So he's saying, don't get carried away. You've got to tranquilize the thought process as well. And once you do that, then he says you can be aware of chitta. Now, I have a different translation of chitta, which is state of mind, okay, or mind states. So he said you can become very aware of your mind states, and you can gladden your mind. As the Buddha says in a number of sutras, when the mind becomes glad, samadhi, concentration, is not far away. So you want to bring up gladness in the mind, and then this gladness leads into concentration as the next phase. And you'll notice after that, it doesn't talk about tranquilizing anything anymore. You've tranquilized the body, you've tranquilized your thoughts, and now you can just experience the sensation of the chitta, of a gladdened mind, which will bring you into concentration samadhi. And then in that samadhi, you can start to, we didn't get there yet, but you'll start to have these dharma insights, right? Contemplations, of various things about the dharma. And those can lead to liberation of mind, right? And things of that nature. Anyways, that's all I wanted to add. But I know what the person was asking about. I'm not sure if there's a sutta that talks that way exactly, but there might be suttas that kind of might lead one to think, in that way. But I think what Buddha is showing here is that it's a gradual unfolding process. But at any point, like he talks about the jhanas, he says from the first jhana you can attain nirvana, from the second jhana you can attain nirvana, all the way up to the different, formless ones. There's a sutta where he talks about that if you contemplate and see it in the right way, you use your samatha vipassana correctly, you can actually attain nibbana at any one of those levels. It's just a question of how thoroughly you let go of, the things that are blocking you, from doing that. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. I love that you brought in, both kind of reinforcing what Seminary Sattama is saying, that, yeah, we can focus on one aspect and that's very fruitful for us, but also you really pointing to this kind of progression. And within this teaching, we can see there is a progression. And it is so, just as you say, we practice Anapanasati, the body calms down, then the mind starts to calm down, and there's a kind of as Ayya Sobhana said, it would be very difficult to have a peaceful mind if the body's agitated. It's like there's a certain order, not necessarily one after another every time, but there's a certain sequence here. And it's beautiful to point that out and to see that. And then, of course, we can see how we experience that for ourselves. And then, as you say, the Dharma, the actual Dhammanupassana, which we're coming to next, the actual insights, deep, profound Dharma insights come about when the sequence has gone through, the body's calmed, and then the mind has calmed, and then we can really open to reality the way it is and see with insight. So thank you so much for those comments, Richard. Really valuable. And Sharanya, did you have something? Did you want to say something?
Yes, Aya. So I feel like my understanding of chitta is wrong. I think I have a tendency to confuse it with thoughts. But when it was suggested that we gladden the mind, gladden the chitta, when I think about actually kind of doing it, I feel like it's going to pull me further into thoughts or memories or discursive thinking. So I don't know if you had any thoughts to share about just the way I'm thinking about it. So I understand that chitta is a mind state, but to cultivate that mind state, I also recognize that there has to be the settling of the body and the settling of the Vedana. But I can't help but feel like thoughts and chitta kind of intersect for me in some odd way. So I know I don't quite get it, but I was wondering if there's anything you can do to help me with that.
Ayya Sobhana?
Well, the state of mind really manifests itself by way of thoughts, or the activity of the mind is very often manifested by thoughts and also influenced by thoughts. So if I think of my respect and devotion to the Triple Gem, that thought instantly causes my state of mind to settle down in a beautiful way. And then depending like what the state of mind is, like the type of thoughts that are getting kicked out are really arising from the state of mind. So they're very closely interconnected. And I don't think there's any harm in observing thoughts within this meditation as a signal or a sign of what's going on with the state of mind. And then sometimes the discursive thinking or the verbal thinking can become very subtle, and then one can just experience a shift in the state of mind that's very subtle. It's like something like the mind becomes more bright or the mind becomes more cloudy. And you can't, it's difficult to even say anything more about it because it's just that kind of a subtle shift.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on, friends, to the next part of the sutta. We're entering into the realm of Dhammanupassana, the fourth foundation. The Buddha goes on. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing fading away. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing fading away. Viraga. I've got a feeling there's a missing piece here. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Ayya Sobhana, but I think, yeah, there's a I'll breathe in, observing anicca, impermanence.
Right.
Maybe, yeah, I think there's a piece missing here. So let's just consider this possibility. I'll breathe in, observing anicca, observing impermanence. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing impermanence. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing fading away. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing fading away. Viraga. They practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing cessation. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing cessation. Nirodha. Nirodhanupassi. And finally, they practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing letting go. They practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing letting go. The word here is patinissaga. Patinissaga, I think Bhikkhu Bodhi translates this as relinquishment, which is a beautiful word. But Bhante Sujato often goes for the more colloquial speech. And surely this also really makes sense for us. I'll breathe in, practicing letting go. So these, as Richard was saying a little bit earlier, these are the really profound insights we can begin to appreciate when we practice Anapanasati, and we've come to the point where the body and the mind are, say, tranquil, have calmed to some degree. There's some degree of settling and relaxation, and then we can start to notice change. We can start to direct the mind to relinquishing, to noticing, fading away, how everything's arising and passing, and how nothing lasts. Everything comes to cessation. And as we allow ourselves to observe cessation, this is how we have the ability, we have the opportunity to really let go, to see things through to the end. So just to give an example, in our life, say we have some difficult emotional turmoil around something that's happened, yet we want to let go of that. We want to be free from that. But how does that actually happen? And this is where the Buddha's teachings are so amazing for us, because people will want to let go, but not know how to do so. And here we're really coming to appreciate what it takes for us to actually be able to let go. It's like Ajahn Chah said, 99% of the path is wanting to let go, but not being able to do so. How do we let go? It's through coming fully into this experience, to meet it 100%, to see experience arise and see it pass. And there's the letting go. So to realize cessation. So this is a profound insight, but it's something that we will be experiencing in our practice all the time. And the way we get to experience it is through the practice, right? It's through stopping. It's through allowing the mind and body to settle in just this way, whether it be observing the breath or some other practice. But this is a very helpful, excellent practice, as the Buddha's telling us, to observe the breath. To simply observe the breath, we can come through our experience and come to the point of really relinquishing and letting go and moving through and freeing our minds, freeing our hearts from suffering. So what a beautiful, amazing, encouraging sutta. Ayya, anything you'd like to say about this last Dhamma aspect?
In the context of our retreat, I think this tetrad could be about gaining stream entry. When we really see impermanence and the impossibility of holding on to anything. And then the passion, the viraga, has the meaning of a dispassion or not being emotionally caught up with the like and dislike or those reactions towards different, likable things. And then it also has a meaning that the self-identity, the self-delusion is fading away. So like the self is disappearing. And then the self-delusion has disappeared, it's ceased. And then we don't want to pick it up, we won't want to pick it up again. Even if somebody hits us with a stick or, scolds us or something like that, our self-delusion is not going to want to spring back and say, no, we pick up the flag and start waving the banner about this, the self and my ego, my identity. This is just this really inspiring sequence of ideas about seeing anicca, experiencing fading away, the cessation and the relinquishment is this is like what we're aiming for with our practice. I see there's another hand up.
Damon, please go ahead.
Thank you. My experience at times of acknowledging or experiencing impermanence or the truth of impermanence when I'm meditating, my experience actually can often be one of, when I think of letting go, there's also like a pervasive feeling of sorrow and grief. And I wonder if you could explain, like how to deal with that, because finally recognizing the truth is not always like so joyous. When you're under the impression that things were permanent for so long, and then you find out they're not. Like I said, I'm not the only yogi who have experienced this great sorrow and grief about finding out the truth.
Thank you so much, Damon, for this beautiful reflection for all of us. How many of us have experienced this? And I don't know how much it relates to a sense of almost like if you turn your attention back and review your life and how we've been living. You can tell me, Damon, if this is the case or not, but like looking back and seeing how deluded we've been, how crazy we've been. Amazing. What idiots, what fools we've been for so long, And then the other aspect of this experience for me is also looking around and just seeing, oh my goodness. And we all know this, I'm sure. You look around at the world, at people, at what they're doing and how they're thinking and how convinced they are, that they're right when they're doing things that are clearly, completely unskillful, harmful, hurting themselves, hurting each other. As we wake up, to the Dhamma, or even just to the precepts and the value of the precepts. So every step along the way, basically, we can experience a lot of poignant emotions of, oh my goodness, what have we been doing? What is being done? And what I think is really important about this is that we don't personalize any of this, And I think in a way that's almost where the sorrow comes from, is when we step into the personal, because it's tragic. I mean, everything there is tragic. My life is tragic, your life is tragic, everyone's lives are tragic in samsara. But when we observe that sorrow and see where that sorrow is rooted, often it can be in this slightly tinge of delusion around self and other. And then we can investigate that. And Ayya Sopan has already touched on this, that if we can really go to the source of the problem, which is this self and other delusion, then we can pop that bubble. And this is, the real path starts to open up. And it's like, actually, there's no sorrow there. That's a sorrowless state. To see the bigger picture, you know. So I think it's fantastic to feel and to observe and to relate to this sadness and sorrow and then to investigate that, because that will take us, you know, that takes us further, and it's really pointing to the goal, you know. So sadhu, and thank you, Damon. And if you'd like to come back with anything, that's great. Otherwise, you're happy, great. Ayya Sobhana, we're coming to the end of this session. I'd like to invite Ayya Sobhana to say some parting words for us. We've basically come to the end of the sutta also.
I think we may have to return again next week. Now, Ayya Brahmavara is going to be joining us many times during the remainder of this retreat, but not next week, but the week after next, I think. Is that right?
I might be able to join Ayya, but maybe just to be listening in, because I'm on the move. So I'm going to try, but I can't guarantee. So yeah, absolutely.
I think with this sutta, we may spend a bit more time next week really delving into the factors of awakening. I think it's so wonderful for us and for our training and for the work that we're doing together to get a very solid, good grounding in the four foundations as they are manifested with this breath meditation. The arising of the liberating insight is something that's only possible truly to come about if we're able to have that measure of stillness. There's a kind of a creative process that matures in wisdom that is just particularly able to happen within the space of meditation. And so this is such a powerful and useful summary of some of the things that we might encounter during meditation. And if anybody encounters any of it, then you may feel happy and glad to know that the Buddha was right, and he predicted something like what we can experience if we set up the conditions, put the body straight, put mindfulness in front, and practice.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
We can close by paying respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namaswami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you, everyone, for your practice and for your patient listening.
Thank you, Ayya, both of you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.